May 20th. Okay, on my calendar here. Yes, it's been 2 weeks because last week, of course, there were events, Yom Ha'atzmaut, Yom Zikaron events. So now we're together, and we'll be together until till June. Then we'll break for the summer. I just want to pick up on some things from last class. We spoke about the Marcheshes, Aegis, and I said that his father's name was Edelman, and it was pointed out as unusual because he took his grandfather. The father didn't take the grandfather changed the name, or the grandfather-in-law changed the name to Aegis, and the whole family took it, but not the father. So we spoke a little about that. It's a little confusing. But someone mentioned that maybe this is a relation to Aegis in America, Jacob Aegis, the rabbi from YU, or it's a Hanan, who then becomes a follower of Mordechai Kaplan. His brother Irving Aegis taught for many years at YU, but Yehuda reminds me that the Aegis family name is Agushevitz. In fact, it's just have to look on Wikipedia, you'll see that. So no relation. And I think Baruch, I was summarizing without looking in the book by Kamenetsky, and I told the whole story about the mashgiach, the assistant mashgiach at Slobodka, named Dov Hirsch Heller. So I said Dov Tzvi Heller, and I said his name in Yiddish, you know him as Berish Hirsch. And Baruch points out that no, in Poland you say Berish, but no Litvak would be called Berish. The name is Bera, like or Bear, but not Berish. So thank you very much for that, Baruch. And then Baruch, this I knew. Baruch though mentions that this was the father-in-law of Yaakov Kamenetsky, and therefore the singer Dov Shurin is a grandson of Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky and is named after Rabbi Heller. He's been living in Israel for many years. He really is basically like on the very right wing, like a Ben Gvir type of person. But he's the anicle of Yaakov Kamenetsky. And since we're back to the name Dov, we spoke a good deal about Dov, how Dov as a name became accepted. And let me just point out one thing that Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky himself, as only he maybe could point it out, in his recently published Emes Yaakov on page 411 on Shmuel Aleph, Yud Zayin Lamed Zayin, he mentions how very unusually the name Dov in Nach is used for both masculine and feminine. And when I saw that at first, I didn't know what he was referring to. But I mean, he tells us right after that. I'm going to give you the proof of this. If I can pull up my screen for a second. Yes. Here we go. Take a look in Malachim Beis. What a chapter is this? Chapter 2, right at the end, the famous story with Elisha. What does it say here in verse 24? Vatetzena shtayim dubim minear. Vatetzena. That's feminine, not vayetzu. It's so we see here that dove, even bear, she bear, even with the ending yud mem, the masculine plural ending, could be for a female bear as well. So Rav Yaakov, as we know, had a great knowledge of Nach, and he picks up on this. Paul, I don't know if Paul is with us. And I have to correct something that I told you, Paul, privately. I think I did correct it, but I'll tell everyone else. Paul asked the question, we spoke about Rav Tzvi Rabinowitz, and he changed his name from Spectre, and I gave the reason for this, and I mentioned that also he has a son. Yitzchak had another son who took the name Rabinowitz. It means son of rabbi. It has nothing to do with the story of him going bankrupt and having to change his name, anything like that. Paul says he knew there's someone named Spectre. I mean, there's a guy, Spectre's a name. There's some guy in Hollywood, a music guy. Remember, he went to jail for murder. I forget some Jewish guy named Spectre. Or someone will type in the who it is at the bottom. But he said that there's a family in London that claims to be from Spectre. And I wasn't sure. I looked it up, and lo and behold, it can't be the case. Because although the Rabbi Yochanan had three sons, and one of his sons kept the name Specter, Reb Chaim Aryeh, the Bechor. But Chaim Aryeh's son, Yosef, he took the name Rabinowitz. So there are, and that, this is in the Toldos Rabbeinu Yitzchak Chanan. So there are no descendants alive named Specter, unless someone in a later generation took the name Specter again, which I don't know. And I need to therefore make another correction. I was right mostly, but wrong a little bit. I told you the story. I met someone in London who said that they were direct descendant of Rav Nosson Adler. And I said it's not true because Rav Nosson Adler only had a daughter and she died as a young, I think she was 12 or 13 years old. It's not true. Thank Mordechai for pointing out. He also had a son, Rav Nosson Adler. The thing is, though, the son had no children. So that I knew. So I'm right about that. So there's no descendants of Rav Nosson Adler. And for those of you who are coming, I should have known this. At one time I must have, but it's been a long time since I've been back to Central Europe. I think it's been 6 years because I speak a lot about Rav Nosson Adler. We're going to Boskovitz, where he was the Rav of. So we're going to see the mikvah that the Hasidim to this day, they discovered this mikveh under a house. I walk in there one day and lo and behold, there's wet towels there. That means that a group of Hasidim had been there earlier in the day and left the towels there. So why are Hasidim going to this rediscovered mikveh in a place where there's no Jews living today? Because that's the mikveh that Rav Nosson Adler would have gone to, right across from the shul. So if you want to see this mikveh, come with us this summer. We still have a few places. Yes, I see someone just popped up on my screen here. Arlen Specter. You're right. The senator, Jewish senator. Very good.
By the way, Mark, if I can, the shul
yeah.
in Boskowitz is amazing. There's no shul in the world like to see that shul in Boskowitz is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is.
I'm throwing that out. Just okay. Sorry
There is
about
a
that.
shul in a place called Trebich, which is like it, and I think maybe in Holashov. But the Boskovich shul is unique, and there's something which you will learn, which you didn't, which I didn't know the first time we went there. You have been back. You're going to see proof that the Shabtai Tzvi adherents were mamish in Boskovitz. In the shul, we see proof. So wait and see that. Two more things. I just wanted, because I have to be accurate, 100% accurate. We try to be this here. I went back to my notes about Rav Hutner, and when I described him going to Berlin, it's not exact. I said that when the shidduch with him and the daughter of Rav Sher fell through, that's when he went to Berlin. And I speculated that maybe is a good limud schluss. People wonder why I went to Berlin. It's not true. I looked at my notes where I have this exactly from the real source. He was already in Berlin. He went to Berlin on his own because he wanted to see what was going on over there. And that's when he was told that she was going to marry someone else. So we just have to go back to the original assumption that he went to Berlin because he wanted, like everyone else went to Berlin. They wanted to see the big Jewish world, the big general world. And finally, the last thing I want to mention, this is what Rabbi Kelman raised the very last class about how today we take it for granted. Sunday is the days of simchas. We do it on all these days. As far as I know, I think we even do Christmas Day. They'll do simchas. And Rabbi Kelman mentioned Rav Moshe. If you look in Iras Moshe, Evan Hazer, Volume 2, Simon Yud Gimel, he discusses it. And he says that on the days of the holidays of the non-Jews, that would be, let's say, Christmas, Easter, something like that, he says, you cannot schedule a Jewish event on those days. Certainly not if you're doing it because you think it's their holiday. But he says, even if you have no interest in that, you can't do it because of Maris Ayin. I'm thinking, what's the Maris Ayin? Christians don't get married on Christmas Day, as far as I know. That's the dafka of the day. They don't get married. I think so. That's the day they go to church. So I don't think anyone would assume that we're doing a bar mitzvah because of that, but that's what he says. So, and then he says, so what about Sudas mitzvah? If you have, let's say, a Sudas mitzvah like bris milah, obviously he says you do that even on a day like Christmas. But then he says, what about a bar mitzvah? And he says a Sudas bar mitzvah, you should do it another day, and a wedding you should do it another day. don't do it on Christmas Day. Um, so he's saying you can't do it. Well, he says tov. You should, because bar mitzvah is a sudas mitzvah, so better to do a different day. And Nisuin, you should also do a different day. He leaves open, I guess, that maybe under worse circumstances you might be able to, but it's absolutely the wrong thing to do. And then he says, even Sunday and Thanksgiving, although it's not Usser Medina, it is Usser Medina on the other days, on a Christmas Day, let's say, unless it's a Sudas mitzvah. But other things you certainly couldn't do. I guess a wedding's also Sudas mitzvah, so it wouldn't be usher absolutely. But he says Thanksgiving and Sunday, which is even less problematic, a suda for a suda, and even for matters that are not a Sudas mitzvah. He says it's not absolutely usher, like it would be usher on Christmas Day, for instance, to get together and have a special Jewish event, like I don't know, come hear a speaker on that day or something like that. He says that would be usher. You can't have any a simcha. You want to have a birthday party. It's usher. He says to schedule it on Christmas Day. If it's a sudas mitzvah, you shouldn't do it. But he doesn't say it's usher. He says it's tov. It's better to push it off like a bar mitzvah. You can a meal, you have to have it that day, but a bar mitzvah, you can have it the next day. So you shouldn't do it, but it's not going to say it's usher. A birthday party is not a sudas mitzvah. Is a bas mitzvah sudas mitzvah? According to Ramosha, it's not. So according to Ramosha, absolutely usher to have a bas mitzvah on Christmas Day. But okay, others think it is a sudas mitzvah. But then he says, so about Thanksgiving and Yom Rishon, Ein Lasor Medina, you're not supposed to, Ein Lasor Medina, it's not technically forbidden, Aval Bal Nefesh Yeshel Machmir, but you should avoid it. So this just shows how different it is, because Sunday, that's the big wedding day. How can you get rid of Sunday? And um, now, after this class, Moshe sent me something very interesting, and let me just pull it up for you here to show you on the screen. Hold on a second. Here you go. I want this is the sort of thing that it's very interesting for this book. If I ever write it, I'm trying to work on it, but I got sidetracked on my Basim Roche article about history of Halacha in America. This is from the Jewish Morgan Journal in from 1954. This is the paper which had Orthodox, non-Orthodox, mostly Orthodox stuff in it. Rav Soloveitchik published a lot of material in it. So on the left-hand column, this on page 7, it talks about the religious world. There's a column about this, and in there it talks about Rav Melech Shechter. Schachter, that's the father of Rav Hershel Schachter. He had an idea that to stop the Saturday bar mitzvahs. Saturday bar mitzvahs, because all the families come and they drive, and also, we have this notion that you shouldn't be someone who doesn't wear tefillin. And some of these bar mitzvah boys, if you do it on Shabbos, they literally will never wear tefillin. If you do it another, so here's all the good reasons why we shouldn't have Sunday bar mitzvahs on Shabbos. The celebrations. And what do you do then? What can they learn? There's no mafter. He says they can read the Shema with Trupp out loud. He doesn't specify Sunday, but he says any day. But obviously Sunday's the best day. And later in this article, it mentions how in opposition to the plans, what rabbis wanted to do things like on Sunday, Rabbi Bloch of Telz comes out and says it's absolutely forbidden. You can't have anything on Sunday. It's the Christian day. And he says it's akin to Avodah Zarah. Ramel Schachter says that's nonsense. And obviously, we know which side has won. And if you go in the most Haredi communities, they'll have their weddings, bar mitzvahs on Sunday. As far as I know, no one bats an eye. And it's actually the best day. I've said it many times in Israel. The rabbis just are so short-sighted. They were talking about having a 5-day work week. I don't know if it'll be 5-day, 4.5-day, whatever it is. So Sunday, because Israel, first of all, it'd be great for religiosity because there's a lot of people. There's only one day to go shopping, one day during the week to go to the beach, all these things. But if they had another day, Sunday, then many people would want to be part of a traditional Shabbos. But they don't have a second day. So therefore, they go off and do their thing. So if you had a Sunday in Israel as a day off, the shuls, many more people would be inclined to go to shul because they don't have to go to the mall that day or whatever it is they do, places where stores are open on Sunday. Obviously, the beach and the parks and everything. Number one. Number two, if you look at anywhere in America, what's the big learning day? It's Sunday. Many places, it's Sunday morning after davening, you have our shir, you have shir in the afternoon Sunday. If you had in Israel a Sunday off, that would become the big day where you'd have Yom Shekulo Torah, they'd have Shiurim, it would do wonders, it would be amazing for Limud Torah. And yet the Gedolim, as they're called, from the Haredi parties, when it came up once, they were absolutely opposed to it. They said it's a Christian thing, it's a Christian thing. And so here they're hurting Kirov, they're hurting Limud Torah, and all they have to do is look across the ocean in America and see how Sundays become such an important day for learning and for all our Jewish things take place on Sunday. And obviously it has nothing to do with Christianity, because who goes to church anymore? Sunday's the day to go to the football game and things like that. The churches are not crowded anymore. The stores are all open. We don't have Bluelos anymore, except for our friends in Bergen County. It's like the only place in the country where the stores are still closed on Sunday, and that's not for religious reasons. They have to take a vote every couple of years. It's well, when someone like Helmut says Daf Yomi on New Year's, of course. So these are examples of things that I think are obvious. Okay, let us now, my friends, return where we stopped in the middle of this letter. It's known as Laman Das, the famous letter signed by the Gedolim. We spoke about a few of those Gedolim. I'll tell you about one or two more of them, attacking Musar in a really harsh fashion. So I want to pick up right in the middle of the letter, because everything we're going to see after this is either a defense of this letter or a response to this letter. And we saw how over the top it is, and it continues. I'm picking up in Katz, page 105, where they deal in the letter with the big problem. Because what does Musar come from? The great Rav Yisrael Salanter, who's respected by everyone. So how are you opposing it if Rav Yisrael Salanter instituted it? The great Rav Yisrael Salanter. So the letter continues that the first one to establish Bate Musar. What's a Beit Musar? It's like a house or part of a shul, a room in a shul, whatever they did, where people would come to study Musar. There'd be a shmooze. Who established it? They say Rav Yisrael Salanter, and they call him Hagaon, Hagadol, Hamafuar, Hatzadik, Hamaforsam, Morin Rav Yisrael Salanter. So why did Rav Yisrael Salanter establish it? They say because in his opinion, what we've had until now in terms of learning Musar was not enough, and therefore we need to establish it in an organized fashion. And therefore he set up these houses of Musar study where people would come there and focus on Musar. However, this is Rav Yisrael Salanter never intended on establishing a sect. This was just a place where people, after a day of work, would come and they learn some Musar. But it's not a sect. That's the problem. The problem with the Slobodki Yeshiva and these other yeshivas is not that they study Musar per se, at least we see now. Some will go further and say that is a problem. But what we've seen up till now, that's not the issue. It's that they made it into a sect. It's like they're special. They're different. They study Musar. They're an elite with everything that implies. He says Rav Yisrael never wanted to do this. He never, chas v'chalila, that he would establish a kitah chadasha. And nevertheless, even though Rabbi Yisrael Salanter never wanted to establish a sect, he just wanted to establish Musar houses. Listen to this. V'afal pikein kol gedolei ador b'chol yidei asames godlo b'torah v'tzidkaso v'kavenos ha'tova hisnagdu lo b'goloi kiyadu meforsam b'glios lita v'zama. Even Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, he didn't want to establish a sect, a Musar sect. He just wanted to establish these Musar houses where people would study Musar. Nevertheless, they testify that Kol Gedolei Ador, this is a real exaggeration and distortion, because it's not true that Kol Gedolei Ador, but they do say in the letter that all the Gedolim opposed Rabbi Yisrael Salanter on this. Although they respected him and admired him, they opposed these institutions, the Beit Musar. And then they say, what's the proof of this? Only 5 communities established these Beit Musar, and within a period of time, they also, all these institutions, these Batei Musar, closed up because the people opposed it, and the Chachmei HaTorah HaMitzim, that is the authentic Torah scholars, their eyes were in the front of their head, and they saw that this would lead to a new kat, a new sect. So the first question we had is, how could you oppose the Rav Salanter supported it? Well, one, Rav Salanter didn't support a sect, didn't support this sort of sect like the Musar yeshivas have established. And number two, even the limited Musar that Rav Salanter wanted, the Gedolim opposed it. And it goes on that these Gedolim understood that from a base medrash, that real Torah and real Yerushalayim, comes out of, you can't have a separate sect like this. He says, the letter continues that there's always been Chevra Shas, Chevra Mishnayos, Chevra Ein Yaakov, Chevra Midrash, Chevra Chai Adam, all these sorts of things. And there also was Chevra to learn Musar, Chovos Lavos, Mesilas Yesharim, etc. However, these groups, they never regarded themselves as a sectarian movement. They loved everyone, and they got along, and they weren't all the different chevras, they all got along with each other, and there wasn't sectarian movement. Notice how today, listen to different chevras he mentions. He says, what type of chevra? Shas, Mishnayos, and Yaakov, Midrash, Shulchan Aruch, and also chevra Olim and Musar. Today we don't really have them because everyone's doing Daf Yomi. So you see, as I mentioned in the past, you had a chevra Shas, but that was for the people of who'd been to yeshivas. And who went to yeshivas? Very few people. People who maybe had been who learned a little bit, so they could be in the chevra Mishnayos and Yaakov. It goes down in levels. And really, when you think about it, who'd be going to the chevra of the Midrash or the chevra of Musar? It probably would be the least learned, because that's something they could do. So that's not going to appeal to the Musar people. On the contrary, the most learned need to go. The letter continues. The problem, it says, with this cut is that they think that there's no truth except for their way. And the letter continues that this is in opposition to Torah values. The idea that you're going to say, they say that the Musar people said, if you're not a Musarnik, your Torah is distorted. And the only way to be a complete Jew is to follow the Musar path. And he says, people would look at this and they would say, well, what's wrong? They're studying Musar. But only the Gedolei Yisrael, it says, Rak Gedolei Yisrael, could see what would come from this Tnua Musarit, that they could see that this would turn into a dangerous sect, a cult, whatever you want to call it, and this is not the proper way, because what did they do? Asu at Ikar Tafel Tafel Ikar. They took the Ikar, which is Talmud, and they made that secondary. Now you're going to say, wait a second, they studied, what do they do, Musar, an hour, a half hour, whatever they did a day? Clearly they studied Gemara for longer, but what was regarded as most important in their eyes? According to this letter, what was regarded as most important was the Musar. And that's what was Ikar Kfiyas Lumodam. That's where they put their most, everything else, I guess, was just to go through the motions. But where they were mostly focused, that was to study Musar. Sefer Year of the Musar. And after Rabbi Salanter died, and his students, and the students of his students, Asher lo hevinu kavanaso, v'hol yardu sof da'ato. So here it says, the students of Rishon Salanter, Yitzhak Blazer, Zissel of Kelm, Ramtali Amsterdam, they didn't understand what Rabbi Salanter wanted, and they created this new sectarian movement. That's always the claim made, that these new people who are coming up and setting up this group, they don't really know what the master wanted. This is a distortion. Of course, it's always a hard argument to make, because how could these rabbis know more than the Talmidei Mufakim of Rishon Salanter, the ones who were with him every day for years? But that's often this argument is not a real argument, that the people making it know it's not real, but they want to be respectful, let's say, to Rishon Salanter. So therefore, they, rather than criticize Rishon Salanter, they criticize the students. So then what about the Gemara learning? Listen, now we're in the Gemara learning in these yeshivas. No one can deny, you go into the Sabaki yeshiva, they're learning Gemara, they're spreading Gemara. What is it? Why are they mabitze Torah masik lamdel? Why in Shas and Poskim? They do this only to fool people, that all their Gemara learning is just it's a fiction, it's a fraud. It's designed to bring people into their tents because they also want to learn Gemara, and then when they come in, they can indoctrinate them into the Musar. talk about downgrading and downplaying how Slobodka regarded the study of Talmud. If that was the case, then you wouldn't have great Talmidei Chachamim and Shas and Poskim coming out of these yeshivas. And we know they did. Even Navardik, the Stiper went to Navardik. Even Navardik had great Talmidei Chachamim come out of it. Now you can look at maybe certain Hasidic yeshivas where they didn't have great people coming out in Shas and Poskim. That's because that wasn't the major effort. But you're going to say this about Slobodka, but they're saying it. Then they say, this is really interesting. I wonder if anyone has had experience with this. They say that even the Musar they learn there is not the way it's supposed to be done. Musar is supposed to be learned. You take a sefer and you go through it. You take the Mesilas Yesharim and you go through it. What do they do there? This is what they say. They study ideas. It's like they take a this is the Musar shmuzin, yes, but this isn't the students. As far as I know, the students picked the Musar sefer and went through it. What the Musar shmuz, he'd get up and he'd pick a pasuk or an idea, and then he'd speak about it. So what he's saying is, what the letter's saying is, they're not following the classic Sfarim. They're just inventing stuff. And if you read the letter, you see they don't think of the Alter Slobodka is a real chacham. He's inventing stuff as he goes along, just making this stuff up, as opposed to really focus. He's original, basically. And they don't think he has any right to be original. You want to learn Musar, you learn the classic Musar story. You don't start coming up with your own ideas. What you're supposed to do is take the Musar books, take Nevi'im, Agados Chazal. Don't come up with your new ideas. What they say, Lafi Shita Sam, Ushtu Sam, according to their Shita and their foolishness. What do? They Nivdalim Layos Kabrios Bifnei Atzmam. Sonim Achol Asher Lo Yelech B'Darcheim. They set themselves up as a separate group and hate all those or oppose to all those who are not going along with them. And everyone can look at them and look at the Chil Hashem they create. You look at them and say, these so-called fears of God, how bad are their actions? And they create a Chil Hashem. They have a fake of haughtiness, fake gaiva, go on and and finally they say that call me. They look down on anyone who's greater than them in Torah and Chachma if they don't follow the Musar school. So therefore, if you don't follow Musar, if you don't adopt the Musar approach, you could be Reb Chaim Brisker or anyone else. They look down on you because you're not following this approach. The letter continues. It's a very, very long letter that he says that they go on. The letter says, "Hakatan libale hamusar." In other words, you have a little guy at the Slobodka Yeshiva who knows Musar. They weigh him higher on the scale than a Rav, a Posek, who's able to permit agunos, a huge Talmud Chacham, because in their mind, how much Gemara you learn is irrelevant if you don't have Musar. The greatest Lamdonim without Musar, they're meaningless. And then it continues more of that stuff. I don't need to read more, I think. But then it ends. Finally, it says more of the same. These matters we have seen ourselves in a number of places, in particular in Slobodka, in which, this is not the end of the letter, sorry, it goes on for another 2 pages. He says there are 200 Bachrim there, and in order to bring them in into their cult, slowly they reveal to them their Shita. Those who are interested in Musar, but don't have anything else, they bring them close and they increase their financial support. And this is a fact, by the way, that the Alter Slobodka gave more financial support to those followers of Musar, those students. Remember, you had in the base medrash, some he knew were into Musar, others were not. They just came because they wanted to learn with Ramosha Mordechai Epstein or the previous Rosh Yeshiva. We know that the Alter gave more support, stipends to those who followed him. So was that right? Is that it's? I mean, he thought that this was a way to encourage Musar adherents by offering them this gift that they would join, encouraging them. And but we know many of the students were very upset with this. They saw this discrimination against them, and the letter says this as well, and then continues that if the students come up with a Musar idea, that's the most important thing, not chidushim. Uh, okay, they call it what goes on in Sabatka, Toras Mavis, the low Toras Chaim. You can't get any more really outrageous in your accusation, if I can use that term. I'm not judging these Gedolim, but but to call it Toras Mavis, not Toras. The Shita of Musar is Toras Mavis, not Toras Chaim. By the way, this Wednesday night I will be there. Anyone can join. There is a in Muncie, Rabbi Beckhofer is putting on an event, the 100th Yortzeit of the great Rav Avram Eliyahu Kaplan of Slobodka and of Tells. In fact, I want to show you a picture of him here. Rabbi Beckhofer has written about him a good deal. He was a genius of genius, this Rabbi Kaplan, and also a follower of the Musar movement. Let me show you a picture of him. He was such an original thinker, but I'm going to show you a picture of Rabbi Amalio Kaplan. Here he is. Died at, I think, 33 or 34. And I want to call attention to his payas or lack of payas. I'm going to speak about that maybe next class, about what's doing with these short payas. And I'll show you a picture I recently published on my blog post from Rav Soloveitchik and Rav Aaron Soloveitchik. Definitely not the level of payas that the hair on the ears, earlocks that they tell us we have to have today. So I'll deal with that, I think, in next class. But there's a picture of the great Rav Avram Kaplan, and on Muncie on Wednesday, we're going to commemorate, celebrate this great figure on his 100th Yortzeit. Its famous classic Musar work is Bikvot HaYirah. And let me continue. So with this letter, they end the letter by saying, "You, Atem, Gedolei Yisrael, Makomos Moshe Sechem, you rabbis, Gedolim around the world, we're turning to you and know that we personally know what we're talking about. God forbid for us to say something that we don't know. Well, Edim Anachnu, Al Asher Inu Beinenu. We have seen this with our own eyes. We've seen all this, all the bad stuff we're talking about. As long as Rav Yitzhak Elchanan was still alive, these Musar people were kept in their place. But now that he's passed away, they've gone out of their holes and they're creating troubles. They're spreading themselves as Marbitze Torah V'Yira, but it's all under the phony Torah V'Yira, because really what they want to do is they want to bring these students close to indoctrinate them with Musar. And you rabbis who maybe haven't heard or don't know anything about them because they haven't reached your area, you should know to keep away from them. And we've given you fair warning. And that's how the letter ends. What a letter! Oy, it's almost like the Chayrim against the Hasidim. Other than saying chase them out, from every city, it's basically saying the same thing. Keep far away from them. They have a phony Yirat Shamayim. They're creating a sect. And if you think, well, they're learning, they're good boys, they're learning Torah, this and that, that's because you're a balabas and you don't know any better. But the Gedolim, they see beyond the surface, and they know that this is really the beginnings of a sect, a kat, and if you don't stop it, it's going to turn into all the bad things that it happens. And that's always the argument that in cases they use, that you masses, you don't see this, but the Gedolim, they see beneath the surface. That's the argument whenever you have a case where you want to know why we can't do this. Like why the Haredi world can't do something which seems so obvious. The answer is because the Gedolim said so. So for me and you, it might seem that there's nothing wrong with it, but who are we? The Gedolim see better than us. And we saw who signed this letter. He mentioned it was signed by Tzvi Rabinowitz, the Rav of Kovno, son of Yitzhak Elchanan, Moshe Danashevsky, the Rav of Slobodka, Rav Yitzhak of Ponevezh, the Zecher Yitzhak Rabinowitz, and a number of other rabbis. Most are not really known anymore today. Rav Borstein, who was later the Rav of Tavrig, who comes to Merkaz. I mentioned him. There's one more of the rabbis I want to mention because he's worth noting. He's the only one. I'm not going to say he's a household name, but among people who know Torah history, you know about him. He actually, in Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's first sefer, the sefer on electricity, he has one of the approbations, the Askabas, together with Rav Kook, I maybe Rav Zalman, I forget. So who am I speaking about? I'll show you a picture of him. Rav Abba Borochov. He comes to Eretz Yisrael in the. He was a Mizrahi person, by the way. He comes to Eretz Yisrael in the 1920s. Actually, let me check this. We have it right here. Yeah, 1923. Talmud Chacham, Sfarim, Cheval Yaakov, Shelos and Shuvos, a real Gon Shebegonim in Eretz Yisrael. Of course, since I'm going to show you who his children are, people are very interested, I've learned, to know about Gedolim who have children who went off the derech. So I asked my friend, he's a Rav in Brooklyn, a Dayan in Brooklyn, he listens to the classes, why is it that we're all so interested, everyone's so interested? And he said, it's because we always hear, they're always criticizing us. He's speaking about the Haredi, the Hasidic world, how this generation is so bad, we're all the terrible things we do, the internet, this and that. And the truth is, in many ways, we're a lot better than the previous generations. Look at the previous generations; we're supposed to be so good, and yet you can go down the list, Gadol after Gadol after Gadol. Other than Rav Moshe Soloveitchik, like find me one Gadol who didn't have children, who left the fold. I just heard Ruth Weiss. I was in New York at the Tikva fund the other day, and I heard a talk by Ruth Weiss from Isaac Bashevis Singer. Isaac Bashevis Singer. I mean, his father was a Rav, comes from his brother was a Rav, comes from the most Orthodox Hasidic family. And this is, it's Hasidim, it's Misnagdim. So he thinks that we find this interesting. That, if I'm not mistaken, I think he even wrote a sefer, Isaac Bashevis Singer's father. Yeah, he did write a sefer. We find it interesting, he says, because it's good to know that it's not just our generation that has problems. So who were Abba Yaakov Borochov's son? Well, here he is, Aaron Michal Brechiau, a Zionist author, person involved in Zionism in Israel, irreligious, no kippah. Here's a picture. Oh, with him. Sorry, I enlarged it. Where is it? There he is. So here's the Gadol, Rav Borochov. Here's his daughter. I assume not religious also, but I don't know. But here's his son. Definitely not religious. And that's just the era. That's just the way it was. And like I said, you can go down the list and you can. And in fact, I'm going to play you something now. I played it once before, but I think it's meant we have many new listeners, people watching us. I think you'll find it interesting because this isn't a phenomenon just in Israel, Israel, here in Europe. It's in America as well. I think what I'm going to show you now shows it very clearly. I'm going to show you a video of a Rav Zivitz from Pittsburgh, one of the Gedolim in America in the early part of the 20th century. He wrote Perushim on the Yerushalmi. In fact, it's funny because his video, his great grandson writes this unbelievable. His great grandson calls him, or great great grandson, great great grandson. Rabbi Zivitz was the world's greatest intellect and read many languages. Okay, he was a big Talmud Chacham, a Gaon in learning. To call him the world's greatest intellect, okay, a little too far, I would think. But the footage I'm going to show you, one of his sons was involved with Warner Brothers, and this is some of the first footage from Warner Brothers. So here it is. And when you watch Rav Zivitz, look at his sons. And you see in that picture, and people say, well, it's America. This is what America did. This was the same thing in Europe. It was the same thing in Palestine. This was just the era. You see the Rav, and you see it was the era. You see what became of his children. You could see from looking at them, maybe they were fine Jews and that they gave charity and things like that. But Shomrei Torah and Mitzvos, they were not. So here's the video. Again, one of the first videos we have, one of the first productions from Warner Brothers. 1921. There's no sound to it. you'll see the Rav, and you'll see his young daughter and his sons. Are there any Shomer Shabbos descended from Zivitz? I haven't found any, and the people who respond. So there's the Rav. First movie of a Gadol B'Yisrael. This is before the Chavetz Chaim movie. This is the first movie we have, as far as I know, of one of the Gadol.
Was that Punch? Okay. Yeah.
Okay, whoever has a sound on, please turn it off. Yeah. Now you'll see now all the sons come in a minute, and you'll see that they're not what they don't have the look. That's the daughter, and then all the sons will come over, and that I think is really the metaphor for America. What happens to the children of a Gadol B'Yisrael in America? They didn't have day schools in those days. They all went to public school. It was a different era. So those are the sons of the Gadol, respectful for their father, loving for their father, but obviously not following in the father's path. Not one of them has a kippah on, and so that was what it was like in the early part of the 20th century.
Who is this? Who is this Gadol?
This is Rabbi Moshe Sivitz. In Hebrew, it's Zivitz. He was in Pittsburgh, one of the great Rabbanim in America in the early 20th century. Wrote commentaries on the Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud. By the way, since I mentioned, Rav Borstein, the Rav of Tavrig, who comes in Merkaz Harav for 6 months before he passes away, he's one of the signers of this letter, this terrible letter. I have to tell you that on page 281 and 282 in Katz, he tells us the following: that Rav Borstein would later regret it, attacking the Musarniks as he did in the end of his life. And Katz is recording something that he says that Rav Borstein told him himself. And you can believe Katz, because he's not a polemicist, he's not an apologist, he's doing honest history. He tells it like it is. And he says he spoke to Rav Borstein at the end of his life. He died in 26, I believe. And he says, I no longer oppose Musar. He says the fact is that it was Dafka, the Musar yeshivas, that through all the difficult times of World War I, they were able to keep themselves together. And he says, when I opposed Musar, there was a reason for opposing it. Because in those days, yeshiva students focused exclusively on Torah study. And therefore, anything else, Musar, that would ruin what it meant to be a yeshiva student. He says today, yeshiva students read the newspapers, they read books, they read all these things. So Musar is not going to harm them. But in an era when Torah study was what the focus, the ideal, Gemara learning was the ideal of a yeshiva student. They didn't all do that, but for a good yeshiva student, that was the ideal. To then come in and say for the good yeshiva student, you should also start learning Musar, that was something that he said, I have to oppose. But today, the yeshiva students read all sorts of other things, so there's no reason to oppose it. Okay, so that's the letter, the famous Laman Das, that everyone refers to. It appears in Hamelitz. And in the weeks following, you have more rabbis supporting it. I don't need to go through too many of the other rabbis. He just mentions a few. I'll just mention one name. On page 113, Katz mentions, quotes a letter from the Rav of Tavrig before Rav Borstein became Tavrig. Tavrig was a Lithuanian city. His name was Gershon Mendel Ziv, Zion Yud Vav. I wonder, there's another Ziv, Asher Ziv. He's born in Israel, but he came to America. He published the book on the Ramah, Moshe Isserles and the Chuvas the Ramah. He taught at YU in the graduate school for a number of years. I wonder if it's the same family or they're related. There's a few different Zivs. So this Gershon Ziv, who's totally forgotten today, but he was a well-respected Rav in his day. In his letter, he says, take it or leave it, what he says, that Rav Yisrael Salanter, and he says, quoting this, I spoke to Rav Yisrael Salanter, and he told me this, that the Musar, the Batei Musar that he established were only for the Baal Batim, the masses, that they're not for yeshiva students. And any yeshiva student, when he's going to learn Musar, should just learn it by himself. Baal Batim, who work all day, they come at night so they can learn Musar. but it's not for yeshiva students. On the contrary, if for yeshiva students, it will lead them to bittul Torah off the regular Sidorim, etc. And he says, I heard this mipiv hakadosh, that that the Batei Musar are not for Lomdei Torah. Okay, so that's another argument you could say that, okay, the Batei Musar, we saw that the Rishonim the Batei Musar, he established it, but the Gedolim opposed the Batei Musar. Now we have a new approach. The Rishonim established the Batei Musar, but not for yeshiva students. And the truth is, he never tried to establish it in yeshivas, but they didn't have yeshivas really in those days, like we have today. So you could say he didn't try to establish it in the local base medrash where the yeshiva students were learning. Well, he had a beit Musar. I don't know if it's ever been established that the guy who's studying all day in the local base medrash is not supposed to come to the Beit Musar at the end of the day. If you read what Rishon Salanter writes, and if you read what his Talmidim write, of course, it was obvious that everyone studying in the local base medrash in Kovno, you should also go to the Batei Musar, or at least learn it on your own. But no, you're supposed to go to the Batei Musar because that's where the Musar Shmuz is given. I mean, that's like a davar pashut, an obvious thing for the followers of Rishon Salanter. But he says differently, and it could be Rav Yisrael Salanter told him, I don't want it in the yeshivas. And he extrapolated that to mean that the Batei Musar are not for yeshiva students. When really, yes, I could see Rav Yisrael Salanter saying that in the yeshiva, we don't interfere with the curriculum, but you're not in the yeshiva 24 hours a day. So you leave the yeshiva for an hour and you go hear the Musar Shmuz. Maybe that's how you can, as they say in yeshiva, shtim the two reports. And there's one other letter here from, oh, by the way, I'll just tell you about Rav Ziv. I'm not sure why, why he writes this letter, because in 1896, which is the year before that, I found this. There's a sefer called Beis Kelm. And I have to thank one of our listeners, Yisrael, who sent me as a present. He sent me the 3 volumes, I think it's 3 volumes of Beis Kelm, the Torah teachings of the yeshiva of Kelm. Rishon Salanter's Talmud will speak about that as well. Simple as this, Broida of Kelm. So he sent me the 3 volumes. And in one of the volumes, volume 1, page 76, there's a letter from the altar of Kelm to this Rav Gershon Ziv. What's the letter about? Well, Rav Gershon Ziv had written the altar of Kelm, asking him to daven for a sick person. And Rav Gershon sent the altar of Kelm money. In the letter, money for him, for the yeshiva, whatever he sent it for him. That's what he sent it for the altar to daven. And the altar replies, he's not at the level to daven for anyone. He's not, he's not such a tzaddik. He's not Rishon Salanter that he can daven for someone else. And to take money for it? Absolutely, he can't take money for davening for someone. I mean, maybe if he thought he knew for a fact that his prayers would work. He's not a Hasidic Rebbe that you give a pidyon for after you visit him. And so he sent it back. Well, if Rav Gershon Ziv in 1896 so admires the altar of Kelm that he's asking him to daven for a sick person, sending money, why a year later is he joining in the attack on the Musar movement? I don't have an answer for that. Following this, Katz prints a letter from Rav Liel Klatzkin, the Rav later in Lublin, but here he was Rav in Mariampol. He late in late 20s, he comes to Eretz Yisrael, Jerusalem, and he's a member of the Eda Charidit, of the most extreme section, but he's from Lithuania, one of these unbelievable Gedolim. But his son, again, I hate to say it, his son was not just a run-of-the-mill heretic like the others I've shown you. His son was a heretic of heretics, a Nietzschean, a great scholar as well, Yaakov Klatzkin. Let me show you his picture, just so you know who we're looking at. Where is he? Here, Yaakov Klatzkin, one of the great early Zionist thinkers, and or 20th century Zionist thinkers, and a great scholar of Jewish philosophy. He published a lexicon of medieval philosophical terms. You know why he never got a job at the Hebrew University teaching there? He had all the connections, all the religious, all the connections with the Zionist movement, everything, because he intermarried. Yaakov Klatzkin, son of the Gadol Shabagedolim, Eliel Klatzkin, who wrote an essay about his father. It's published in one of Leo Young's book, Men of Our Heritage, one of the volumes on Gedolim. Yaakov Klatzkin wrote about his father, because of course he admired his father. And Yaakov Klatzkin wrote Chidushei Torah in his youth. He ends up intermarrying. He died in Switzerland. Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg was with him at the end of his life because he moved to Switzerland. He was totally forgotten after the war, and had to do with the fact he was very embarrassed by it. He fell in love with this German girl, and he marries her, and then he just becomes like a loner. It's like he wouldn't allow anyone to come to his house. He wouldn't accept invitations because he loved his wife, but he couldn't take her like to his friends. So it took a while for people to realize that he's intermarried, and that's maybe some people see this. He basically destroyed his career and his standing in the Zionist movement by intermarriage. So you could say it's romantic. He gave it like the King of England. He gave it all up for the love. But for those who were with him at the time, it was more complicated than that. He was playing the field, put it that way, and he got involved with her, whatever it is. But that's Yaakov Klatzkin. And I don't need to say other rabbis' names unless we deal with them, but you should know that he was an important writer involved in Jewish things and a big opponent of the assimilationists. And in the end, he ends up assimilating. And his son is not Jewish. And when they wanted to do something in his honor, I forget what it was, in Jerusalem, they wanted to do something, they wanted to publish his book writings in a collected volume. They found his son. I think his son was in Chicago at the time, and his son refused to contribute because, it's a different world for him. It's Nebuch. It's just a couple. Katz just quotes one more letter, and that's from Rav David Friedman of Karlin. Here, let me show you David Friedman of Karlin. Another one of these unbelievable Gedolim, but I have a picture of him, I believe, here. No, I don't have a picture here. Actually, hold on. What should I say? I can pull it up for you, because he's famous because he was an early leader in Chovevei Tzion, in Return to Eretz Yisrael. So here he is. Look how short he is. The irony, Rav Moliver is two to the left, looking at him. The irony, they said that he was such a small person, but he was so respected and carried such greatness. That's Rav David Friedman, Rav David Karliner, as he was known. Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg actually wrote a hesped in German on him, which we translated into Hebrew in the book I published, the collected writings of Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg. So Rav David Karliner also has a letter. It's a more moderate letter. He also says that we don't have cuts, we don't have sects in Judaism. The idea that you're supposed to come together to study, that's with Gemara. You learn b'chavrusa. If you learn Musar, you should learn by yourself. It's a one-on-one thing between you, your conscience, and God. He says it's better to learn these things by yourself. And that's really it for David Karliner. He actually sent his letter to Rav Borochov, originally saying not to publish it, but then for whatever reason he changed his mind, Katz tells us, and he gave him permission to publish it. So that's the opposition of the Gedolim. Yeah, these are Gedolim, no question about it. But anyone who knows anything about rabbinic history knows that at the end of the 19th century, there's a lot of Gedolim I haven't mentioned. A lot of Gedolim in Lithuania who didn't sign this letter, who didn't join in the terrible accusations against the Musar yeshivas. So next class, we're going to see the great defense. Wait till you see who comes to the defense of the Musar schools, the Musar movement. That will be next class. But for now, we've started. We have the attack, the assault on Musar. No holds barred assault. Next, we'll see the response. And the figures are just as great as the ones who we've seen already. Someone says to me, someone says, Hadassah, that poor Christians did get married on Christmas. That was the only day they had off from work. Okay, I didn't know that. I mean, maybe today they get married on Christmas. I don't know. I've never heard it though. But it could be that in certain circles they do get married. Married. I mean, today Christmas, it's hard. Everyone travels to family. But maybe they do. I wouldn't know. Yes, Moshe says that in many places in Europe things are still closed on Sunday. They are, but it has nothing to do with religion. Europe is such a post-Christian country. We're going to be in Spain this summer. People think Spain is Catholic. Spain is officially secular. And if you want to know who's in the churches, a bunch of old women are in the churches. No one goes to the churches anymore, even the so-called countries that used to be Catholic, like Spain and Italy. So if things are closed, it's because of the workers' rights and all that. It's not because of religious at all. Moshe also says that Rav Chaim Halberstam fought with the Sfadiger Rebbe for his ways, but not with his father Yisrael, who had the same practices and ideals. Yes, thank you, Moshe, for pointing out. It's a common theme. It's easier to go after the lesser figures, as it were, than go after the more important ones. M.J. Franco, Rav Chaim was more ticked off at the Yaniko of the Rishner, including the well-known notorious case, not so much Sadegura. I have the book on the Rishner. David Asaf has written a lot about that. Look, there was stuff to get upset about with all the other Rishner dynasties. Okay, if we can do classes maybe on the Rishner and the Sadegera, we'll come back to that, especially because I have unpublished new material no one's ever seen dealing with the Rishon dynasty. 20th century materials. I'm not going to reveal yet where I got it, but I have it. In terms of someone privately says, in terms of rare exceptions, that is, children who remained religious, Rav Baruch Ber, Rav Ezra Finkel, the Brisker Rav, and Rav Yerucham Avovitz were rare exceptions. Some of them are also a little later. I'm talking an earlier era. They're a little later, but even among that later era, most of the Gedolim also had children who, as it were, went off the path. And this is in every circle you're in. You have that.
Abramsky is a famous example, isn't he?
So what?
Abramsky is a famous example.
Rav Yair Cheskel Abramsky had two. Everyone knows Shimon Abramsky from London, who was a communist. By the way, his grandson wrote a great biography, or I don't know if you call it a biography, but a book about his grandfather. Yeah. About Shimon Abramsky. So he's the communist, the irreligious, but much more talented was the writer, Yaakov David, named after the Ritbaz, Yaakov David Abramsky, who was in the land of Israel, who also was irreligious. We have a letter from Shaul Lieberman to Yaakov David Abramsky. He was quite close to him, basically advising him, to make up with your father or to have a good relationship. Yaakov David Abramsky's son was killed in the 48 war. He was, I think, 13 years old, and a bomb landed and killed him. So you can go down the list with the different Gedolim. And someone privately says that what I've said is we together are the most on the derech generation since the emancipation. And thanks for reminding me of that. This is a counterintuitive thing for people to know their history, but it's true. I was asked there was the guy Ethan Eisenberg, I think his name is, who did the movie on Rav Soloveitchik. The great movie, which for some reason you can't get it on YouTube or anything, but many of you have seen it, no doubt. So I wanted to do another movie as a documentary film person on the phenomenon of going off the derech. There even was a book called that. And he asked me, I guess I would maybe have been one of the consultants on it. If you look at the movie on the Rav, my name appears in the end in very small letters. But I said to him, I don't think that's the story. I said, this generation, you have less people going off the derech than at any time since the emancipation. Look at people, Gedol Yisrael in the 1920s. Find me Shomer Shabbos descendants. You're lucky if you find any. And if you had a family of 5 kids, maybe one. This generation, we have less. Of course, people leave. You're always going to have, but there's less who leave than at any time since the emancipation. And that, I think, is the amazing story. Not the people who leave, but the people who stay. Because look what we're up against. the general culture is very anti-religious. Hollywood, everything out there is in opposition to our lifestyle and any conservative type of lifestyle, religious lifestyle. And yet, look at how many we keep in the fold. Look, if people don't want to be in the fold, we don't want to keep them here. If they're miserable, they don't want to. But look how many do find happiness and remain in our community. And that, I think, is the story. So the person wrote that to me says that maybe today it's not like it was 15 years ago, that more go off today. But I would say still in America, it's still an amazing, amazing success story. In Israel, in the religious Zionist world, they lose many more than we do in America, it seems. And that's it's a problem. So I don't know. But in America, at least, and in Chutzarts, that's why when we were in Jerba, my son's a Rosh Dat Moshava. So we're in Jerba, and they're explaining, and I told them, they don't want to go to Israel, many of them, because they saw what happened when the others from Jerba went, they became irreligious. And I said, go to Moshava. And we spoke about this before already. And what are they going to say if you say that? And on our trip last summer to Tunisia, we had someone who even ran for Knesset on the trip. And we had people living in Israel there. So the guy who ran for Knesset said, why don't you move to Israel? And one of the rabbis spoke to us and explained to us that if they go there, they know that many of their people will become irreligious. So I don't know what to say in cases like that, but it is true that in terms of keep holding on to our people, it might be easier in Chutzlaretz because we don't have an irreligious. I mean, it's not like in Israel we have a whole Jewish culture which is not religious. And Ben Melech, I'm Melech, and you're Ben Melech. Says who's another Melech? I just was reading Melech Schechter, the one I mentioned, but his name is Eli Melech, but. I just was looking at a book, another Marc, I can't remember now. You say the irreligious son of Borochov, in all likelihood, did much more good for the Jewish people and Jewish survival continuity than others, including his father. Uh, Listen, I'm not here to judge people. The irreligious in the land of Israel, or irreligious in quotes. I wouldn't put it in quotes because most of them were irreligious. They had a whole shita about being irreligious. They rejected religion as a shita. We're not dealing with people in America who are not ideologically irreligious. They were ideologically, many of them. I don't know about him per se, but of course they did a lot of good. They're the ones who established the state. They're the ones who went to the land of Israel. Without them, there wouldn't have been a state. So that we have to give them a lot of thanks. And they did good for the Jewish people. But on the other hand, people like his father also did a lot of good. That's the great dialectic of Rav Kook, that we have to recognize the good in the irreligious in this generation. Remember, people like the son of Rav Borochov, Rav Kook says, recognized that we are now in a generation where it's time to return to history. We've been out of history. The Goyim pushed us out, and we lived as this sort of Luftmensch existence. But in the 19th century, the call was given to us. Just like other nations were becoming nationalists, that we too, which is the first and the ultimate nationalism, the call went out that we have to return to being complete people, not just people of the book, people of the spirit, but people of physicality. Rav Kook says we forgot our bodies are holy. So we have to return to complete real existence, just like King David in his day, complete existence. The problem was that the rabbis, like the father of Borochov, they didn't hear it. Or I shouldn't say that, he was a Zionist, so I don't want to quote him, but the other rabbis didn't hear it. And they said to remain in Europe. And people like the son of Borochov, they looked at the rabbis and they saw that the rabbis were speaking falsely because they were saying that you have to remain in Golos. And it's not, you have to remain like you've been, and we can't bring back Eretz Yisrael. So they saw that was mistaken. So they threw out it. They should have just thrown out the mistaken words to the rabbis and kept the Torah like the Mizrahi did. But they threw out the baby and the bathwater. They threw out everything. But they still have a lot of zechuyos. They're the ones who carry on the physicality, and the father carries on the spirituality. And then we're going to create the new Eretz Yisrael Jew, where we take the physicality and the good in the physical world of the son and the Torah of the father and create the new Jew. And that's so chas v'shalom for me to say that the son of Rabbi Borochov was not doing good things. He was doing good things. We were at the era of Kook said that we needed people of all sorts. We needed people connected to materiality. And by definition, they could not be religious at that time because of the mindset and also spirituality. It was a break. It was a necessary break, unfortunately, but everyone will come back, he thought. And someone privately just says what I said. He probably said it before I said it. Among American Rabbanim pre-1930, there were almost none whose children were unscathed. Perhaps the Meitcheter and Rashraga Feivel Mendowitz. Yeah, so it's a fascinating story. Thomas says, weren't a lot of the early Zionists intermarried? I don't know a lot. Who was intermarried among the early Zionists? There was one other who's I can't remember, forget now who it was. One of Herzl's second in commands, I forget. But I in general know. In general, they were married to Jews. Someone privately says that to avoid being drafted, men would change their last names. Yes, that's true. Or to avoid being accused of being landowners by the communists. Even in my family, I heard this story that they changed the name. Yes, Chernikovsky was intermarried. Yes, I didn't think of him because I didn't think of him as, had you said Hebrew writer, I would have said it. But
Moses Hess.
Minus, but yeah. Jack asks, is the Borochov Center in Toronto named after this Borochov? I'd find it hard to believe. Borochov had a son who was rabbi. He had a son who remained religious. Not only did he remain religious, he was rabbi in Malden, Massachusetts, and he wrote a sefer, or I think it's two schalakim. So that's often the case. You had a brother. Look, the Rogachover. No, sorry, not the Rogachover. The Rogachover's son-in-law. I was thinking of Citron. He had a brother who his brother was the one who was the communist and the two irreligious ones. And finally, Nissen, the so-called Chavetz Chaim clip actually shows the short cover Rebbe at the same Aguda event. Yes, there's other people. You can see online where they identify them. I believe Rav Aaron Valkin is identified, and a couple of the German rabbis are identified as well. It's an amazing discovery. But did you like the video I put on of Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg? I didn't put it on, but I asked the guy to put it on. I had it privately and they didn't want to make it public. And I said, because it has personal stuff, I guess, as well. So I asked him if he could, he told me he would make it, when I said, could I put it on? He said he'll make a special video that goes on, and it was put on. And actually, I thought I'd announce it to the world in my blog post, but instead he sent it to some people, and then it went around the world through Facebook without people realizing that I'm the one who asked him to do it. But the guy who did this is from the Cohen family. He's the grandson of Arthur Cohen. If you know Arthur Cohen, the filmmaker of Basel, Garden of Finzi Cantini. I mean, he's won, I think, more Academy Awards than any other person. These are in like documentary movies, as I think. But Arthur Cohen, live and be well. It's the famous Cohen family from Basel, from the descended from Rabbanim in Basel. His brother is Gabi Cohen. For those of you who remember years ago, he was the head principal of Machon Gold School, and he taught at Bar Ilan. The Das Mikra Perush, maybe it's Esther, I forget one of them, is Dr. Gavriel Cohen. So those are the first videos in color of Rabbi Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg, and including two pictures. Both from before the war, one with him laying down. I would love if anyone could identify who the couple he's laying down with on the grass, and the other of him walking. But wait till the next post I have. Also, stuff unbelievably important, new stuff from the Warsaw Ghetto, which no one has ever seen this material. So give us something to look forward for. Paul says the Borochov Center is Ber Borochov, who is also a Zionist theoretician, very far from orthodoxy. In Arthur Hertzberg's book, The Zionist Idea, you have some translations from him. So very far. Oh, yes, and David says Leo Young is in the video, and Rabbi Hanan Wasserman as well. And David Safir, who you see his name there, I encourage everyone, because when it comes to pictures, I have to say, I don't know how he does it. Every piece, he comes up with pictures, some I know, but many of them I've never seen before. And great pictures of the Gedolim, of events in American Torah history, European Torah history. So all I can say, David, is Dovi, keep up the good work, keep up those pictures, and it's really great stuff. Okay, with that, we come to an end. Yeah, Charles Salangut, Salway of Yale was Soloveitchik. Yes, we spoke about Salway a few weeks ago. He's not descended, though, from the Beis Halevi. He's descended from I guess it's the brother of the Beis Halevi. He goes back, it seems, if I recall, to the Soloveitchik who wrote the commentary on the book of Matthew, as well as a commentary on the Rambam. But it's the same family also. And look, there's Soloveitchiks. One of the authors of the book, the first book in Hebrew on biblical criticism, was named Soloveitchik. We have a number of Soloveitchiks who aren't religious. I don't know exactly their relation, but I assume it's all one family. Rabbi Kelman.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. I don't know if I should tell you. I don't know if I ever told you, that my grandfather was a Rishon Chassid, the one I'm named for. But that's where my part of my heritage, even though I have no shaykhis to it, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word to use. But anyways, that's Sadiger, Rish, whatever. That's a whole different story. But
We're
okay.
going to be in Vienna this summer.
I know, remember,
They
well, the
were in
one thing,
Vienna.
well, I know that's my father and four of his siblings, four of
In
his
fact,
five
if you go to
siblings.
the big cemetery, there's a Noel for one of the, I think it's the Cherkava Rebbe right outside Vienna, the big Jewish cemetery. I went to it, and you know that they were more supportive of Zionism. Always, even when they were in the Aguda, they were more
So the
supportive of
truth, I'm
Zionism.
not. I should know more about it than I do because nobody in our family is considered. But that was, I mean, my grandfather passed away a very young man, but they were. That was their, that's where they come from. But what can I say? Anyways, but yeah, yeah, and they were of course all in Vienna. My father was born in Vienna, came to Canada at the age of 3. But anyway, okay. Nobody. Just okay. Thank you. All right, tomorrow Rabbi Shulman will be giving his shir on Megillat Rut at 1 o'clock. Right, tomorrow's Tuesday. I'm a little confused because holiday today. But anyways, okay, and all our regular shiurim during the week, and we look forward to seeing you and hearing good things. And everybody should be well. And Lila Tov. Okay, thank you, everybody. David, nice to see you at 3 in the morning. I haven't seen you for a while. I was hoping you might comment on the, off the derech phenomena in Israel. It's whatever. It's people express their Judaism differently in Israel that you don't have here, but that's a whole other subject. Okay, for another time. Anyways, thank you. Okay, Lila Tov.
Thank you.
Thank you.